Alright, so we're gonna pick up off where we left. So we have this so far, our ground, our airplane, and the colliders. So our airplane is flying, that's great, and now what we need to do is we want these icicles to move all the way to here, which they do, and then we want new icicle to appear and move, and then a new one to appear and move. And we already made this into a prefab. If it's not blue for you, looks like this, you can just drag it down here and then you will say original prefab and it will just save it down there. I'm gonna delete the extra one because I don't need it. And I'm also gonna delete this one here. Alright, so let's create an empty object and we will call it spawn. And this will be where our icicles are gonna spawn from. And I'm gonna change the shape to this dot, and I'm doing that just to make it visible. And I'm gonna slide it off the screen so the icicles don't spawn on the screen but spawn off the screen. And then we're gonna create a new code. So right click, create, C sharp, and I'm gonna call it spawn. Alright, so I'm gonna extend the screen so we can see it. Let's see, I think this is pretty clear over there. Alright, so the spawn code. We wanted to create a new icicles, move, and we don't want them to all be moving in a steady way where they all have the same exact height. We want the height to change. Sometimes we want the opening up here, sometimes we want it down here. So we want to control that too. So let's start with writing that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a public float. And again, float is just a type of numbers, and we will decide the max time. The max time simply means how much apart are those icicles are going to appear, like one after the other. I'm going to start with 1.5 seconds just as an estimate. Of course, we're going to figure out whether we like it or not. And then to just activate the timer, I'm going to do a float timer. This is just for like to be able to know how much time passed. Time dot delta time semicolons. All right, so those are the first controls. All right, then we wanna write a statement that will generate new um, generate new icicles. So we're gonna create a new void. This void, we can keep it as a private void by just writing void, and then I'm gonna name it spawn. Um, let's say spawn ice. I'm gonna call it spawn ice, and then open curly bracket after parentheses. I'm gonna make it capital just to match everything. So the whole purpose of this one is to create objects for the icicles. All right. So now let's start by making the icicle. So I will say game object because I'm making a new game object, and this game object name will be icicle. I think I might have spelled it incorrectly. So we will use the instantiate, which will simply allow us to create a new object, and this object prefab will be, let's call it ice prefab, comma, and then the place we want it to spawn will be the spawn pose, and we want it to spawn with the correct orientation, so we're just going to use our default quaternion orientation, and then we will do dot identify identity and then semicolon. All right, so we have two new variables that we just created, so we need to let the app know what those are variables. So let's start with the ice prefab. I'm just gonna copy it. I'll go up here and I will say public. Actually, it has to be a game object because we're adding a prefab, and then I'm gonna call it ice prefab, and then the spawn. So we said that we want some of the icicle to go up, some of them down. We don't want them all to be exactly the same. So let's create how high and low it's gonna go. And I'm going to do that by creating another variable. This variable will also be public because I want to be able to control it from the outside. And I will make it into a float. Again, it's a number. And I will write height range. Alright, so now we want the height to change randomly. So to do that, we need to add a random function. And since we're talking about position, it will have to be a vector 3. So I will say vector 3, and then I will call it spawn pos, which is this one. So I'm using this variable right now. And this will equal to transform dot position. So the position of my spawner plus the position of my random range. So it's a vector 3, the x will be 0, the y will be random dot range, and I want to pick the range to be my height range. We will do negative height range to positive high range. And I'm just gonna delete that. That was an extra we don't need. Alright, so this is my code as of now. Semicolon there. So this will be responsible for selecting a random height where the icicles are going to appear, and this one will be responsible for creating new icicles. Alright, after the icicle is created, we want to destroy them because if you didn't, you will keep creating them forever. So icicle, and we want to destroy them after like 10 seconds, which means they will already pass the screen view. Alright, so next we are gonna copy this and we're gonna call it in the update because we want it to happen all the time, and then we will also call it here. But if we just did this, we are calling it on start, so it actually starts with it. Don't forget the semicolon. So if we did this, it will keep spawning them back to back without a break. So we want to spawn one, wait 1.5 seconds, and then spawn the next one. So we want to write an if statement. So I'm gonna just delete this one for now, and I will write if, open parentheses, my timer, which we stated that it is time delta time, is bigger than my max time, which means like 5 second, one more than 1.5 second already passed. I want to do the following. I want to spawn an icicle. And then I want to set my timer back to 0. And then after I set my timer back to 0, I want to again set my timer to time delta time, which will mean, all right, now it's 0 and now the time is back activating and it will start counting up. And here you actually want to add, you don't want to just set. So this is how we are gonna make the spawn. All right. So now if we went back to our game, in here we can see that this is the spawn. I'm gonna drag the spawn code to the spawn, and I will drag the free prefab to the prefab. And let's start with the high range of 3 and see how that goes. So I'm gonna start my game, and as of now, see 3 is a bad height because you can see how big those went up. So let's do 2 and check if 2 is a good height. 2 is a bad height, so we actually need to increase the height, maybe? Let's see. Let's keep it at 2 and see. Alright, 2 seems to be a bad height. Let's go with 1 and see what happens. Alright, so how can we figure out the optimal height? We can drag the icicle and put them up here, and let's set the y to be 0. So this is how the icicle actually look like. So what I need to do is I need to fix the positioning of those two. So if I select them both and drag them down and try to make the center in the middle right here, that would actually help me a lot. So I can see that now if I saved it, and I can actually just delete this again, And let's see the spawn. Let's keep it to 3 again and see. Alright, now, okay, 3 is still bad. So let's see, what can we do? Let's do 2 and try if 2 is any good. Alright, so I guess we need to increase the number, not decrease it. No. Alright, let's try to figure out what's going on. This is part of coding, it's troubleshooting. So I'm gonna drag it again and see. And oh, I know, the icicle is at -3. So let's put it back at 0. And now control these two and drag them down to here. Let's double check icicle is still at 0. Let's put the X back to 0. That will basically centers it. And I'm gonna just delete the old prefab and just create a new prefab. Alright, now I'm gonna use this prefab again and see if that actually fixed it. Okay, 3 does not, well, it's 3 is bad still. Let's use 4 maybe, because I can see 3 is too low. 4 is too high. What about 3.5? 3.5. You will have to try multiple times until you find the sweet spot. 3.5 seems to be the sweet spot. Yeah, where the icicle, no, it's still too off. All right. Let's see if we made any mistake in the code, because that's a possibility. Um, it doesn't seem like we made any mistakes, so I guess we would have to figure out what's wrong with it. Yeah. Alright, I'm gonna try a smaller number. Let's do just 1.5 and see how that would go. Maybe the answer is 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 seemed to be good. Yeah. Or maybe even 1. I think 1 would be better. Yeah, 1 seems to be what I needed. Alright, perfect. So it's gonna be 1. Alright, now we have the spawner and we already made that. Now what we need to do is we want to give the game a logic where if I went through the icicles, I get a point. If I did not go through, I don't get a point. So let's open the icicle and I'm double clicked on the prefab. Let's add a new empty object and I'm gonna call this point. Simply every time I hit it, I should get a point, and I would add a collider, and I will use a box collider, and I would use this tool here to make the box collider yay big and then yay thin, and I will change it to trigger. And what you can do also, go to the icicles and change them to trigger as well. It will just make it easier, and then change the type of icicle to respawn, and change the point to, let's call it finish. I'm just trying to avoid creating new tags. Alright, and then save this, go back to the game, change the ground, this time to a trigger, and call it respawn. Alright, so we gave it the tag respawn and we change it to trigger. So that means if I flew, I'm gonna fall through it. I'm not gonna hit it and stop. And that's what we want, because the game should end as soon as you hit the icicles. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on and create that code. So right click, create script, and I'm gonna call this coins. Alright, I misclicked. Alright, where is coins? Coins. Alright, so we will need few scripts to go in here. The first one would be that we need a place to display our score, or an object that if we hit it, we get points. So let's do that. To do that, we are gonna create a void and we will call it on trigger enter 2D. So it's gonna look like this. On trigger enter 2D, collider 2D call, and then open your parentheses. And here we're gonna say every time we hit the correct thing, we want to add 1 point. So we will need to create a score variable. So I'm going to do a float, and actually an integer, because we want the score to be a full number integer, and I'm going to call it score count, and it will equal to 0 because you have to start your score from 0. And then in here I will say if call, and call is this one, I'm referring to that, ended up dot tag, mean it carries the tag, and the tag of it says finish, which we marked that tag to be finish, then we want to add score. So we're going to say score count plus plus, and that will add 1 point to our score. All right. And then we're gonna also say, hey, if I touched it, I want the game to freeze. If I touch something that is not the score, which is the ground or the icicle, I want the game to freeze. So I will say else if collided with the tag respawn, I want the game to freeze. And that would be um, time dot scale dot time scale equal to 0. If the time scale is equal to 0, the game pauses. If the time scale equal to 1, the game active. If it's equal to 2, the game is twice as fast, and so on and so forth. So that control the speeds of the game. Alright, I'm gonna save my coin code, and hopefully if I did everything correctly, I should be able to run the game and have some results. Alright, let's see. So I will take the coin and I will put it in my player because my player now is also part of the game. And I'm going to change the collision to trigger and I will play. And let's see. As soon as I hit the icicle, I die. But we're not going to be able, like, let's see, I did not hit the icicle and I actually passed. Well, this would be hard. Let's change the force to 5 just to make it a little bit easier. So let's say I actually pass through. I wouldn't have any indication that I actually passed through because there is no places to count the score or anything. So we need to add that. So let's add a UI. So right click, UI, and we're going to add a text mesh pro. If it's your first time adding it, this window will appear. Go ahead and import TMP essentials. And that will just import few things and then you can close the window. And then we're gonna pick the canvas over here and change it to screen space camera and then drag the main camera and drop it here and set perfect pixel. What this will do, it will make your UI the same size as your camera. And then this is my text. You might have an issue where the text doesn't appear. Try to upsize it a little bit. And if you kept having the issue, go ahead and run the game once and then pause it and see. All right, so well, the text was just hidden behind the background. So to fix that issue and you never face it again, select the canvas and change the order to 10, and that will assure you that your text is going to be in front of anything and everything in the game. So I'm going to put the text up here and the score will start with 0 and I'm going to center it. This is just a few steps to make it look pretty. Alright, so now the font doesn't look very Yeti friendly. So let's go to the sprite and let's click on this font. This is a Yeti font. It's an ice font. You can right click on it, go to create and create a font type, or in our case, Text Mesh Pro font asset, and it's going to make you a font asset. Go back to the text and click on the font asset, and it should appear. It's this one. And now we have a cooler looking font. And now if I played my game, again, I am going through, but the score doesn't move because we haven't coded that yet. We haven't coded it yet. So let's do that now. All right. So to code the score there, we need to go back to our coins script, and we need to add few things. The first thing we need to add is our score. So we're gonna go and import something here. So to be able to edit the text, we need to import by saying using Unity, actually no, using TM Pro, and try to spell it the same exact way I spelled it, because the spelling does matter. It's TMP capital and then RO small. And then we are going to create a prefab for that, or we're going to call it. So I will do public, and then I will say TMP underscore text, text, and I will call it score display, display. And that basically just say, hey, I want you to display the score. So every time I increase my score, I want to display it. So I will go here and I will say score display dot text equal my score count dot to string. And what that does is it converts my number into string so it can actually be inputted as a text. If you didn't add this, it's not gonna allow you to input it. So let's try that now and see what happened. So I'll open my game, select my Yeti. It's gonna ask me to add a text. I'm gonna drag the text and drop it there. And now let's go ahead and play. All right. We are having a problem. The score is not counting at all. So let's troubleshoot it again. Let's look at the icicle. The point does have the tag finish. Let's look at the code real quick. The tag does say finish. I spelled it wrong, so make sure you spell it correctly. So now it should work if everything else is correct. Um, all right, still not working. Did I spell finish wrong twice in a row? Yep, I did spell finish wrong twice in a row. Perfect. Well, hopefully you're not having the same issue. So let's actually play it again, and now everything is gonna work well. There you go. You gain points every time you pass through an icicle. And if you fell, the game is over. Alright, so as of now, as you all saw, we have our airplane jumping through the icicle and we get our score going up. Everything seems fine, and if we touch it, basically the game freezes. So now after the game ends, we want to have a screen where we can see our score and everything related to that, and it will also give us the option to restart the game. So on our canvas, we're going to right click and add a new UI, and we want to add a panel. So the panel is gonna cover the whole thing, and it's usually transparent. I like to make it solid color, so you can go to the color and change it. I'm gonna pick a color like this one and then the opacity to 100% just to make sure it's solid. And then we can resize it. When you're resizing it, use this tool here. Don't use this tool, because if you use this tool, it's gonna smush the text and everything. So stick with this tool, drag and make it the size you want. So roughly like this, and I want it to go center. And if we looked in the game, it's gonna look something like that. And of course, you can modify it as much as you want. You don't have to stick with what I'm showing you. And then right click on the panel, and we want an option to be like retray or redo or replay or something like that. So UI again, and I'm gonna make a button, and I will make my button a little thicker, a little block here, and I will then go to my button, go to the text, and change the text to match my um, Yeti IC text, and I'm gonna say reply, reply. Actually, it should be replay, not or play. I'm gonna capitalize it all because when you capitalize it, the eyes looks much better. Alright, I'm gonna stretch my button a little bit so it matches, maybe change the font to a little bit bigger. And yeah, let's work a little bit on aesthetic here. I'm gonna make the font, maybe I should make the font darker. So I'm gonna pick up a good dark blue color, and then we can see how the button look. And you can change the button background from this option. You can change the button color when it's highlighted, when it's pressed, and all the other fun option. And then I'm gonna add a text, and this text will basically restate my score. So I'm gonna actually, let's, whenever you are doing that, make sure you are in panel, because if you are not, it's gonna add the text to the wrong spot. So again, right click on panel, text mesh, and I'm gonna say, I'm gonna call it score, and I will center it, and again change the font to the IC font. I'm just gonna capitalize the whole thing, so it's gonna look like that, and maybe make it a little bit bigger, about yay big. And then we are going to make another text, one more text in the panel, and this one will be the actual score, which would start as a 0, and this will change slash appear whenever we finish the game. And I'm gonna center it as well. So now it's gonna be like this, a tiny screen that will show us our final score. And if you wanna hide the previous score, you can pick the panel and move it up, and that's how it's gonna like hide the previous score, so the previous score is not appearing, and then the new score will appear, which will be our final score. Alright, so far so good. Now let's go ahead and add two codes. The first code is going to make this 0 changes to whatever final score we got. And the second code will be whenever you hit the play button again, the game restarts. Alright, so I'm going back to the coin code, the coin code where we designed the way the score is going up. And I will add another public temp text, and this time it's gonna be final score, final score, and I'm just naming it final score because that's what's gonna appear. And then very simply down here, after the game end, we want the final score to change. So I will go here and I will write final score dot text, because I'm trying to change the text, equal score count to string. Very simple. So that will just make it happen. And if I hit play right now, we're gonna face a problem that I want to show you. So this error, don't worry about it. Um, as long as it allows you to play, don't worry about the error. See, the screen is in front of me the whole time. And I don't want that because I want it out of the way. As of now, I can't really do anything. So let's say, and the whole thing just is not working right now. So let's fix that. So if I went to the screen and you see this eye, I just took it off. Actually, let's see, yes, this eye took it off, or actually went here and undone this, undone this button. Actually, yeah, you would do it from this toggle button. It's gonna make the whole thing disappear. And now if I played my game, play almost normally, but I'm still not colliding with the icicles for some reason. So, alright, I found the problem for why we were passing through it. And the problem simply is because we did not add the text to the final score. So we need to tell the game what text to change the final score to. So if I went back to my Yeti and dragged the final score, which is this one, I believe, dragged it here, and now if I run the game, I probably should have run the game before. Yes, alright, so now drag the text and put it down there, and now if I run the game and I hit something, the game the game will freeze. And if I want the panel to be visible, I can just do this. And now if I'm flying, the score is going to change. As soon as I hit something, the final score change. But we don't want the panel to be on the whole time. We want it to disappear when we are not using it. So I'm going to take the tick off and toggle. And next step, we're going to code it where it becomes visible when we die and it's invisible when we hit play again. So to do that, let's go ahead and add this code to it. First, we are going to call the panel that we just created. It's a game object, so I'm going to do public game object, and then I'm going to call it scoreboard, semicolon, and then in here we are going to set the scoreboard to be active. So I'm going to say scoreboard dot set active to be true. And that what it's going to do simply, small t for true, is going to make it visible every time we die. And so right now it's inactive. If you look at the top right corner, now it's active, inactive and active. So now let's try and see if that would, it's not actually gonna work. Before we do that, we need to go back to our Yeti. We need to drag our panel and put it there. Now it's gonna work. So if I died, the final score is gonna appear, and now the button's still not working, so let's fix the button. Alright, to fix the button, all we need to do is to program it. So if you go to the button, and this is nice about Unity, is you have this window here. You can go here and add an object, like for example, I can add my Yeti as an object. Like I'm gonna just drag the Yeti and put it there, and then I can see all the functions and things that are related to it. So everything related to the Yeti can happen here and appear here. So you can see like the game set active, you can see the transform, you can change all the things related to the rigid body, you can change things related, even the code coins appears here, movement, the code appears here and all the things. So what we're going to do is we need to create a code that does two things for us. One, make the game active again so you can play it. Two, hide the panel, and yeah, well, the game active again and hide the panel, basically restart the game from the beginning. So to do that, we need to use the scene manager. So I'm just gonna delete this for now and leave it empty so we can work on it together. So I will go back to my score code, and at the very bottom here, like after my on trigger, I will add a new function, and this function is going to be a public function. And the reason we want to make it public is because we want to be able to reach it from outside, and I'm going to just call it restart. This function is going to be restart scene because we want to restart the whole game. So, and simply, this function will have two things. The first thing would be is the time scale. So I'm going to copy the time scale and I'm going to put it here and we're going to change it back to 1 so the game start working again. And number two is we want to reload the scene. To be able to reload the scene, we need to import the scene controlling library. So I'm going to say using Unity engine dot scene management. This is the library responsible for that. And then down here, now I can add my dependencies from the library, which will be scene manager dot load scene. Sorry, just load scene and open parentheses. I needed to spell correctly load scene and open parentheses, and in the parentheses we're just gonna say scene manager dot get active scene, and then open your parentheses dot name, and that simply is just going to reload the scene for us. And since our scoreboard was inactive when we started the scene, we don't have to turn it to false again. But if you want to, you can just copy this one and add it at the bottom and change it to false. But it's not going to do anything different, but just an extra layer of being careful. All right, so now let's test it. Actually, before we test it, we need to go to the button, add, and now drag your Yeti and place your Yeti here, and then go to function, coins, and then you're going to find the scene function that we made, restart scene. You will select it. And simply, as soon as you click the button, that function is going to kick in. So let's test it and see. I'm playing my game normally, and I hit the wall, I hit play again, the game restarts. And that basically how to make a Flappy Bird version. Um, we can fix some stuff. You know how the airplane here is looking just straight ahead and it does not give you the feeling that it's actually moving. We can fix that. We can adjust the colors. We can make a beginning window where you can say play, setting, blah, blah, blah. All of those things you can add, or you can just keep it as simple as this. So if we are talking about YetiCon, we would definitely want to polish this a little bit more by adding stuff like colored background, animation to the airplane so it looks a little bit more convincing, which we can do in a minute. I'm going to show you how to do animation for the airplane to make it look a little bit more convincing. All right, and that's simply it. Very simple game. All right, so let's polish the game a little bit where we are going to fix the airplane to make it have more or less like Flappy Bird. Whenever you're going up, it points up. Whenever you're going down, it points down. So to do that, we're gonna add a little bit to the movement script. So let's go ahead and open it. So to do that, we want to add a rotation to our airplane. So very simply, let's add a rotation speed, and that will decide how fast our airplane is going to rotate. So we're going to add a public float and we're going to call it rotation speed. And after that, we are going to go to the update function and we're going to add the rotation. So the rotation, we want it to be between two numbers. So simply, I'm just going to use this airplane as an example here. So when I'm moving, when I go upward, I want to be pointing like this about 15 degrees. And then when I'm going down, I want to slowly go down until I am vertical, just like I'm crashing down. All right, so let's do that. First, we want to create a rotation angle basically. I want to rotate from 0 to, or from -90, which is going to be pointing down, to 15 degrees. So we're going to create a float, and I'm going to call it rotation angle, and this will equal to math f basically is a math function, and we're going to use the clamp function. The clamp is going to, what it's going to do is it's going to make the value goes between 2 points. So we're going to clamp the RB, which is our rigid body dot velocity, in the y direction, and we're going to multiply this by the rotation speed, because again, remember, the velocity would be fixed in this case, equal to 10, because that's what we decided earlier. And then we are going to clamp the value -90 to 15, semicolon at the end. And then we're going to apply this value back to our rotation. So we're going to do transform.rotation, and then we're going to select the quaternion. And all of these are different method of rotation. You can read more about them in the documentation. And we don't want to rotate the X, we don't want to rotate the Y, and we want to rotate the Z axis. And we're going to save it. So let's look at it and how this would go. Alright, let's go to the movement script and change the rotation speed. Let's put it to 100. And let's test and see. 100 seem a little too fast. So we want it to be probably slower, because this one doesn't give you the feeling that the airplane is actually falling down. So I'm gonna go way lower, like 25, and test it again. This one a little bit better. So I want it to act like the airplane having a curvature, so let's go even down. Let's try 10. 10 seem a little better, so I'm gonna even go lower. Oh, that actually didn't say change. Let's go to 5 for rotation speed. Let's pause the game just to make sure. All right, go to 5. Oh yeah, that's much more smoother. So I think I'm going to leave it at 5. And again, those values are going to be totally up to you. You decide them, and that's that. We have a clone copy of Flappy Bird that is a Yeti flying an airplane.